Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work on Twitter at Sheng_Peng and also at NBC Sharks.
I'm Keegan McNally. You might find my work at halfwall_hockey on Twitter or at my website, half-wallhockey.com or at San Jose Hockey Now. Sheng, this week, what do we got?
We got an exciting show today. Mike Grier had media availability, sort of his mid-season all-star availability after the State of the Sharks, that also the jersey reveal, the Cali Fin jersey reveal. Mike talked with us. So you can see the whole interview at San Jose Hockey Now. But one of the things that Mike said that was interesting was that he's hoping, keyword, stress the word hoping, that within 2 to 3 years, the Sharks might find themselves kind of back in the playoff hunt. He's not saying that he expects the Sharks to be in the playoffs in 2 to 3 years, but we're talking about in the hunt, just not out of it by 30 points by halfway through the season. So in the discussion, in the conversation, whatever you want to say about that. But we're going to look at what is a realistic path for the 2025-26 Sharks. That's the Sharks team after this one and after the next one. So after the 2024-25 season. And I will explain later why we picked that Sharks team, the 2025-26 Sharks team. But what's a realistic path for that team to be competitive?
Yeah, that was the not the biggest takeaway, but a takeaway from the Grier interview was just that, maybe there is a chance to turn this around a little bit quicker. And he's mentioned this in the past, so we'll get into it later on. And
it's the closest thing, though, he's given to actual years or timeline, even though he won't give a hard time, which I'm sure that they have a hard timeline, because when you plan these things out, you don't just tell Hasse Plattner, we'll get good whenever it happens.
Yeah, we'll try and figure
we'll
it
try
out.
and it'll work when it works, Hasso. No, you gotta give him a plan. But this is the closest that Mike has publicly said anything in terms of just like the number of years he's thinking, I guess, is a way to put it, right? And so again, this is not him saying that they're going to be in the playoffs in 2 or 3 years, which I think people misconstrue. But he's saying just they're a lot more competitive, and they're in the conversation. Like, I don't know a team this year that's in a conversation, right? So but that's not quite in it. Like Ottawa Senators, for example, right? I mean, we might touch on that too, as a sort of a cautionary tale, but something like that,
though. Before we get to our main topic of the day, we are going to cover just a few of the quick hitting points for the week. Sharks a couple of them, Sharks recent play since the LA game. Shakir Mukhamadulin's NHL debut tonight. The Cali Fin jerseys that have been revealed.
I have a lot of thoughts about those guys. So.
Oh yeah, Cheng has many opinions on the Cali Fin jerseys. He's doing the deep dive on this one. We got his opinion, we got fans' opinions. I love it. Injuries that have happened for the Sharks and Barracuda.
A lot of those too.
Yeah, a lot of those too. And then just some other general thoughts about Grier's availability, but we'll cover that when we get into our main topic of the competitive Sharks, which is what we'll dub them, the competitive Sharks, something like that. All right, Sharks are mediocre. That's my answer. For Sharks we're gonna get Sharks are bad or good.
A pretty good week, for themselves.
They did for themselves. They ended on a loss, which is good. But they did have some wins, which I think were well deserved and needed. So also good. So
right spots in the loss too. So
so I'm wearing a jersey this week, and it's a throwback jersey. This is probably 2005 or so. My personal favorite Sharks logo. So speaking of favorite jerseys, this is my personal favorite.
It is actually logo. Older than that one, because it's not the Nike swoosh one. So this is that's an old school one, I think. So
I honestly don't know when I got it.
Is there any swooshes? There's no Nike swooshes, right? So...
I got it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I have no idea how old it is actually, but it does have a Cali finish on the corner.
Yes.
It's not the same.
That's original. That's the original one. Yeah, the one we see now is sort of a refresh update, and it's got an autograph on it too.
Yeah, this is actually shout out to Scott Hannon. This was autographed by Scotty back in the day. Way back in the day.
Yeah, we had a great interview with Scott Hannon a couple months ago. So if you haven't heard it, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I doubt he remembers signing this jersey, but he did. Anyway, so I'm happy this week. That's why we're giving a jersey. I think the Sharks, and they called up Mukhamadullin, which I've been wanting to have happen for a little while too. So I can't be mad at the Sharks this week. That's my answer. How
Fair
did you
enough,
feel
but
about the week?
like I said, they did some good things. A couple things that stood out to me. Before we'll talk about Shakir's first game in a second, but I like how Eklund has played since he's moved on to the Nico Sturm line. A lot of some fans thought it was sort of a kiss of death, but he actually looks. Like it sounded like kind of lip service when Quinn said, "Oh, this might get an easier matchups," but there actually might be some credence to it. Eklund had a couple of assists, primary assists tonight, and they were both against the Sabres' third line. And so you might be a little bit to that. And or I asked Eklund after tonight's game why it seems like he's had a little more offense since he's moved down with Sturm and Cunnin. And he talked about it feels like he's just outworking everybody. And again, that sounds like a cliched answer, but there might be
Mhm.
something to that, though, that when you're on a line like that, you just kind of play, you kind of think in a more direct way. You play a little, maybe a little less east west. You're not quite as fancy because you're not playing with Tomas Sherto. You're not playing with a guy like, I don't know, uh, Anthony Duclair or Mike Hoffman or any of those guys who have scored a lot of NHL goals in their career. And so you play kind of maybe a more basic direct game. And anyway,
Mhm.
I thought that Eklund tonight against Buffalo might have been their best player. And the last couple games in general, I think he's shown a lot of activity. The goal he scored a couple games ago was also on that line. And so I think it's been a good change. He's sort of been sort of a secret weapon on that third line, sort of the offensive catalyst there. And it's been good for him. And eventually he will work his way back into the top six. He has actually last few games. When he started off hot, he's been moved up against Buffalo today. He got moved up to the second line. I think the LA game, maybe at LA game, he got moved up to Hurdle's line in the second half of the game before the next game they put him back with the Sturm
Mhm.
line. So I think Eklund has helped make the third line also more offensive. It's just more kind of more balanced there. And so anyway, I think it's been a pretty good thing for him there, and it's good to see him kind of doing a bit more offensively, especially 5-on-5. Good to see him bounce back too, because he was kind
Mhm.
of on a little bit of a rough stretch there.
Mhm. And I have not been able to watch the Buffalo game yet. I'm gonna hit it on replay this weekend sometime. But did he play penalty kill as well?
Yeah, he's been playing penalty kill. I was looking at that. He's been playing penalty kills regularly since I think the Ottawa game,
Yeah.
and Quinn has kind of mentioned. I think after the Chicago game, after he hit the crossbar, Quinn's mentioned that they've been pretty happy about his penalty kill. And in terms of the
Hmm.
usage, it's sort of proof in the pudding that he's been a first or second choice penalty killer. I think he's been with Sturm the last couple of games since Sturm has come
Hmm.
back. And yeah, like it seems like they are happy with him. They're actually getting some kills. I think the last couple of games here, and
Yeah.
it's something to worth kind of dig on a little bit to see where he's improved in that area because they have tried him on and off. But yeah, like it looks like that's going well. So that's something worth checking into now. But yeah, after I think a little bit of a dip in terms of his production, and maybe you're a
Yep.
little worried that the season's getting too long for him, or he's getting ground down a little bit. Again, like I said, it's nice to see him kind of bounce back here. And then he's going to have that All-Star break too coming up to kind of charge up some more to finish strong and get himself to those 40 points that you predicted at the beginning of the season.
I mean, how close are we? He's probably got 20 now.
He's got to be in the 20s. He had 2 assists tonight, so he might be at a
Yeah.
like exact 20
21,
right now.
22.
Is it 21,
Yeah.
22? Yeah. So
Yeah, I think somewhere around there.
yeah, so he's a little off pace, but just a
Gotta
little bit of a hot streak. Just a little bit of a
Yeah.
hot streak, right?
Although
Gotta get hot.
I feel like before he got injured last year around this time, he started to pick up his play too. So I think there was a little bit of a lull, and hopefully he's found his groove and is out of
Yeah.
that mid-season slump. This happens a lot with players, especially the
Right,
ones that
younger
are making
players, right?
their
Yeah. Yeah.
younger players making their way into the NHL. This is pretty common. So, but
And then,
he's
Eklund
again
obviously go ahead.
He's a pro. Like you're
Yeah,
probably gonna
yeah,
mention, he's like got a great mentality for how he
yeah,
approaches the game. So
yeah. Couture mentioned that after the game today. Yeah,
yeah, Tom, I love
and
Aki.
I think for him too, obviously with his size, every night he
Hmm.
can't. How do you say it? He can't be lazy one night and like kind of rely on his size and that too.
Sure.
Every night's he's gotta sort of be like on top of his game, just mentally, someone's gonna clobber him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that could be a grind. I would imagine to find that consistency. But
Hmm.
I think it's
He's
just good that that it's up and down, but it's not like we're out of ups though. And we're on a up now. It feels like.
mhm. He's slippery Pete, so he can just dodge checks at all times. We gotta
At his best,
keep
he
that
is.
up.
There's some nights that he's not
Yeah.
doing it, and that's what gets you a little concerned at times. But
Hmm.
he last couple nights though, or last couple games, he's been slippery for sure.
I think Greer mentioned that in his availability too, that he doesn't back down from guys that are bigger
Yeah,
than him, which love to see it. He's got that fire.
you do. Yep, yep.
Anyway, happy for Eklund. And happy for the team. I feel like there has been a little bit of a change over the. I think we touched on it, or thought we might see this when Couture came back. That they've been better,
Yeah, yeah,
significantly
but
better since Couture has
yeah, and
come
let's not
back.
forget Sturm too. So yeah,
And Sturm, yeah,
yeah.
Sturm, Couture. This team feels like it's more solidified up front than it has been in a while. Um, it did feel like they missed, or they might have missed Mario tonight. Just watching the highlights of the goals,
Mhm.
the Ohotiuk and Burrows was on the ice for like 3 or 4 of the goals
Yeah, that was a
against,
rough
and
pairing tonight. That
did
was a
not
rough
seem like
pairing
it
tonight.
was able to
Yeah.
carry water that well this tonight. But they might have missed Ferraro.
Yeah, no, they did. They did for sure. Yeah.
Hmm. Let's talk about Mukhamadullin. Again, I have not been able to watch the game yet, just based on like my work schedules and stuff. But you did.
Mhm.
How did you think he did, and what were some of the reactions from the coaching staff, or what you saw on the ice?
Well, yeah, they were very enthusiastic after the game. David Quinn said he looked like he belonged in NHL tonight. I think that there's maybe my praise isn't unfiltered. I get or there's praise and there's some stuff that I have questions about. But in terms of just my overall impression though. Of him, you see, just the tools are so obvious. One of the plays that stick out in my mind, and kind of it's both good and bad. It was really early in the game. It might have been the second shift, and I think it was Eric Robinson. If I've got his name, it's Eric Robinson, right, with the Sabers. I
Mhm, yeah,
don't
I
want to
think
confuse it with Buddy. I know there's a few Robinsons out there
I
that
don't
are
think it's
like kind
Buddy
of
Robinson. I think it's
borderline
Eric.
borderline types. So,
A lot of
but anyway,
Robinsons.
though, yeah, all the Robinsons, right? Yeah. So anyway, uh, Robinson was standing off to the side of Kakinen, and he was coming from behind the net and either looking for maybe a wraparound or a pass, right? And Mukhamadullin was on the wrong side of him,
Mhm,
and you could see Mukhamadullin was kind of like, "Oh, wait, where am I supposed to be?" He was slow. He was slow to get over there, but once he decided, "Oh, that's my guy," he was so quick and so long on Robinson. And Robinson, is a fourth liner, right? And this is why a guy is on a fourth line. He kind of did not judge his time and space well, and so Mukhamadullin was able to take the puck from him or
mhm,
stick it away, right? And so anyway, that overall sequence just kind of it teases his quickness and his length.
yeah,
But of course, though, he still got to get to speed with sort of the NHL pace. Another play that was sort of clear that he's not quite at the speed of the NHL yet is he had the puck back to the point, Mukhamadullin, and then Tage Thompson was all over him. And Tage
mhm,
Thompson, obviously one of the best players in the league, also long and quick too, kind of like
mhm,
Mukhamadullin, right? In terms of just the frame, right? Obviously stronger. He's more mature than Mukhamadullin, but Mukhamadullin looked like he was maybe trying to corral the puck, settle the puck down, make a play in that situation. That's a situation where Mukhamadullin is going to learn that is one of the best players in the league coming at me. This is the NHL. You don't have time. You just gotta, that's one where you live to fight another day. You don't turn it over high in the zone, as we know that's the recipe for a counterattack, right? That's just feeding their counterattack. That's a play where you just get it behind Thompson, and hopefully your forward with, again, live to fight another day. Just get it in deep. Sometimes you got to do that, right? Sometimes the best play is kind of no play, so you can't always make a spectacular play there. And so that's one that definitely was a little bit deer in the headlights a little bit. But again, this is Tage Thompson, one of the best players in the world. So it's okay. I'm not killing him for it. In terms of the good though, he led the both teams with 9 shot attempts. He was firing it from everywhere. 3 of the shots got through. He was just whipping it at the net almost at will there. And that's a very good sign. His puck moving wasn't as crisp as you would like on a power play in
Sure.
particular. He had one chance. It was a dead giveaway. I'm not really sure who. I think he just missed his pass. So this was not, and it was just one of those, that happens to players. They just miss it. Maybe he was a little nervous. Who knows, right? But
Sure.
overall, though, if my overall sort of analysis, you see all the tools. Of course, you saw a lot of nerves and whatnot. We'll see if it settles down a bit. We'll get to the injury news in a little bit, but it sounds like he's going to have essentially until these next 3 games, the All-Star break. So what, the next 2 games, I think now actually. So they have 2 games left before their break, and so I
Yep.
would think that he stays in, and they kind of just see what he's got.
Yeah, then it's interesting to say because watching Mukhamadullin in the AHL, it feels like he knows what to do most situations, and I wonder, just like you're mentioning, like the NHL pace is just he's got to get up to that level
Oh,
because
it's another level, yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
so
so that's what I because like you watch him and it feels like he gets it at the AHL level, and I really hope that there's like this period where he gets it at the NHL level, like there's
they
like
seem
that kind of
confident that
transition.
he will.
Yeah,
I mentioned to you, and I wrote in a story that Quinn had meant, this is before they called him up, that the kind of the what he had been hearing about Mukhamadullin was that this was a guy um that has sort of a we talked about with Run and Eklund, or I've written about it, that and Quinn has said, this is Quinn's quote, that they don't let their failures get in the way of their development.
true.
They're not so in their kind of they're not so in themselves when they mess up, that they can't learn from it, that they can't grow from it. Beating themselves up over every little mistake, that kind of thing, right? And Mukhamadullin has sort of, according to Quinn and and also Couture mentioned this after the game, just a sort of a calm.
Hmm.
And like I mentioned, Quinn said that, yeah, Mukhamadullin is not a guy to beat himself up over his mistakes. That he is somebody that they believe can develop here. And being a Sharks defenseman, especially this year, you're due for a lot of failure. A lot of failure. Got to be very tough minded, I think, to kind of grow and develop as a Sharks defenseman this year. And Quinn
Yeah.
also mentioned, actually, besides Run, also Emberson as being cut in that same cloth, as not wearing the mistakes so much that it affects them the next period or the next game and that sort of thing, right? And so Mukhamadullin sounds like that they believe he has that kind of mental kind of that mental game. He's got that down, and so if you add that to his obvious physical attributes, that there's a good chance that I won't say that he's seen the loss of the AHL, but I wouldn't rule it out though, because hearing that he has that kind of mental makeup, along with, again, his obvious physical skills.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see him kind of showing that he's got to stay here, but we'll see though. We're still a long way from that decision. Yeah, after the All-Star break, Sharks get a lot healthier, so I don't know if he's a
True.
shoe in for the lineup, but yeah, it's
And then trade deadline
lots of
when
like.
they might shuffle around some defensemen. There might be a
Right,
spot open after that too.
right
So
after that, right, yeah. So
yeah, but that's still a little while away. So
mhm.
yeah, I'm excited to watch the other 2 games that he's going to play here and see how he adapts. I guess like how his
Yeah.
game has changed from this one first little dip your toe into this.
I don't
So
worry about his offense so much. So even though
sure,
it wasn't like his most outstanding offensive game, and again he led the both teams in shot attempts,
it's
so it
got a
wasn't like he
shot
was,
for sure.
yeah, he wasn't doing anything offensively.
Yeah.
But I don't worry about that, and
Mhm.
so I like again seeing how his quickness and his length was useful defensively.
Mhm.
He's obviously the processing part; he'll learn that with experience. And so overall, I think there was a lot to like tonight.
Yeah, and Quinn said similar, right? Like that
Absolutely, yeah.
he was impressed with him after the game, and he thought he had a very good. I think the words were very good NHL debut, something like that.
Well, just yeah, you said that he looked like he belonged, and
Hmm.
again, yeah, they're gonna be very kind with their
Of
words
course, you don't
after a
want
guy's
anybody
first
to.
NHL game. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily take that as gospel, but
sure.
for sure I agree though that there was a lot of good things shown, and
Hmm.
so if he can grow from here, then yes, he belongs in
For sure.
NHL. If this is sort of, if this is the plateau and this is the best game he has in his next 3 games, send him back down.
Yeah,
So we'll see. It's still a little bit a wait and see. So it wasn't like he had this one game that it's like, okay, this guy absolutely belongs here. So I wouldn't say that. I don't think he has such a good game that you can get your 85 Cali Fin jersey.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
In.
it's a good segue though. To the Cali Fin jerseys. Because yeah, I think we'll have more to say about Mukhamadullin next week when
Yeah,
he
plenty,
plays a few
plenty.
more games. Let's move on to the jersey. I think okay. So you have opinions. I'm gonna get my quick opinion out about it.
Mhm.
I like it, but I think they could have done a little bit more to make it seem more. I don't know what the word is, like iconic, more
Mhm.
not unique, but more like standoutish. It doesn't feel like the
Mhm.
the logo itself stands out enough for the jersey, and I think there are too many stripes. We talked about this last week, and but they had a chance there to like really make it a unique jersey for the Sharks because it is an interesting logo. I think, in my opinion, for an NHL team that they could have maybe done a little bit more with, and then made it like a really standout jersey for me. But I like it overall. But I like anything Sharks, so most anything Sharks. I didn't really love the orange era. I wasn't a huge fan of all the orange that we used to bring into jerseys. So it was never my thing. But anyway, what do you think, Shang? What do the people think? I guess is a better question. I don't
Well, I spoke with
know.
Doug Bentz. He is the chief marketing officer of the Sharks. He said some
He's
things
probably gonna
that
like it.
well, of course he would like the jerseys, yeah, because he designed them. but, but some people took something he said they didn't really like it, and when we talked about it last week, and I mentioned the stripiness, I didn't like it. I also wondered why they didn't just go with the shark logo, the classic one, right, with the old school one that you're wearing, or even the current one, right? Why they didn't just stick that on, right?
Mm,
And I don't want to misquote him, but Doug basically said, and I quote, "People love the shark, but it's a little cartoonish. It's like, hey, this is hockey."
mhm.
And what the point he was trying to make is uh, that with the reason why they picked this logo is that they wanted something that would appeal to larger audiences besides Sharks fans.
Yeah,
And I'll give you an example of sort of what they're going for, what you like it or not if you're a Sharks fan. But I
mhm.
spoke with a friend actually, the night of the jersey unveiling. After I wrote my story, I met with a friend at a bar, and he's a casual Sharks fan. He last time he was at a Sharks game, I think, was the 2019 playoffs.
Sure.
He's not a diehard, but he is a fan. If he's going to pick a hockey team, it's going to be the Sharks. He knows a couple of the players,
Sure.
obviously Couture and Hurdle. Doesn't really know anybody else right now, which is
It's about it,
uh,
right?
which is about right for the
Mhm.
casual Sharks fan. And I showed him the jersey, and then I asked him, if you were to buy a jersey, if you're going to wear it out, which one are you going to pick? And he said, well, for sure, he would pick the Cali Fin one.
Hmm.
And Doug talked about too in our interview that they're trying to to appeal to sort of fans again outside of the hardcore Sharks fan base. They want to do a jersey that, of course, the hardcore some hardcore Sharks fans will like. Not all of them, obviously, because not all of them like the jersey, but would appeal to kind of all sets. And I find that a lot of the reaction was very negative online to it. A lot of people were really mad that he called the Sharks logo cartoonish, which is that's a cartoon. A cartoon's a drawing. I know I'm a big comic book fan since I was a kid too, way before comic book movies. And so like I know about cartoonish does have a negative connotation, right?
Sure.
But it's not all the time though, right? And especially not from a marketing guy that works all the time with the Sharks logo. He loves the Sharks logo too. But he's not wrong though in a sense when he says that, and this is the same conversation I have with my friend. And of course, I know my friend is just one person. I'm not trying to say that this represents the entire non-fan base or casual fan base or whatever. But you might want to wear a jersey. Let's say you go to the bar, you might want to wear a jersey, right? But you may not want to wear a bright teal jersey with a Sharks logo, with the shark literally chomping a stick. I mean that is a cartoon. That is the definition of a cartoon, right?
Yeah,
And
but
you may want something a little more subtle, a little more understated. And so that's where I think they're trying to get to with this Cali. And I'm not saying that they get there. I still don't love the jersey that much. I like it more after understanding their motivation. Like I mentioned
mhm,
last week, I do have a marketing background, so like I get it after talking with Doug a little more, but doesn't mean I like it. Doesn't mean that again, the jersey's not made for me though. And see, the thing is
yeah,
that last week we talked about this, right? And we talked about like I think I said something like, "Oh yeah, it's not made for me. I'm not a fan." I don't know if the jersey is necessarily made again for, and we're that's what I'm understanding. It's not necessarily made for the diehard Sharks fan either, though. Of
sure.
course, they want the diehard Sharks fan to like it and buy it, of course, but they want something that might appeal outside of it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's good marketing. That's what you should do with the third jersey. You already have your home and road to appeal to your kind of your hardcore diehard fans.
Sure.
And I think in general too, it speaks to. I know I'm getting kind of long-winded about it's just a freaking jersey. Who cares in the end? But um,
You go off, man. You got
I, I think
it.
maybe it's hockey fans in particular because hockey is such an insular sports, such
Mhm.
a there's that please like my sport audience, but there's also that audience that, or the part of that audience that is like, if you like the sport, you better love it the right way. Kind of like that
Yeah,
band, hockey is like that band that we're
yeah.
all kind of that small time band
Yep.
that everybody's into, right? And
Mhm.
then if they blow up, if they become like a stadium show, like Taylor Swift or U2, there's going to be so many angry people if that happens 20, 30 years from now. And I do think I see some of the same kind of elements of that where where I think fans are really upset when he says something like that. When he kind of, I wouldn't go as far as denigrates, but doesn't give the Sharks logo as much love and as much respect as the diehard fan wants. But I feel like a lot of hockey fans still they have trouble kind of opening themselves up to new things,
Mhm.
and new things like a Sharks jersey that uses a shark fin and
Yeah,
not
but
not
I
the old school logo. And even that it is the Sharks logo is the definition of it is a cartoon. Look at what a
yeah.
cartoon definition, something animated. It's a shark eating a
Yeah.
chomping a
And
freaking stick.
I and it's not like again, they didn't come up with this logo out of nowhere. This is on a jersey from 2003 or 5 or whatever this is.
Oh no,
This
it's
logo,
original.
it's
It's original.
different, but
It was
it's
yeah,
yeah,
with the
exactly.
franchise
The
since the
point
beginning,
is
that logo.
yeah, it's not just as iconic as the shark head, obviously. Like there's no comparison in terms of the thing, but it's not like it's iconography at least from the inception of the sharks. It's not like they're bringing it up out of nowhere and it's like this is our new thing. Like I think the Panthers did that and they put this new logo that looks kind of more I'll call it soccer-ish, more like
Mhm.
widespread, like the Panthers' new logo with the little crest or whatever.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Not new, but it's been a few years now. But like that's kind of they came up with that out of nowhere pretty much. And like this isn't what they're doing. They're just trying to appeal to a wider audience with a and it kind of works for me. Like it is understated in a way that I like
Mhm.
because you know, but I get it. Fans are like, don't diss our shark head because this is a very unique and cool logo. Like this is iconic for the San Jose Sharks. So I get that, but I don't know. I'm still gonna buy it because yeah, I like
Are you? Okay. Well, there you go then. Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah,
I'll
it's
buy
just
it.
it's a kind of jersey that'll make it less likely that you'll be razzed in a New England bar.
I'll buy
uh,
it if they
yeah.
put Gushchin in it. If we get a Gushchin a debut or get a Gushchin
There's a good
game in
chance
the
of it.
jersey.
They're gonna wear it for every home game through February and March, and so there's a good
Goose,
chance after
goose.
trade deadline that we might see the goose might get loose in these jerseys,
Yep.
but
Then we'll buy a Gushchin one.
But yeah, so I like the idea of what they're doing. I don't necessarily love the execution. It's still a bit stripy to me, even though Doug
Yeah.
did explain the purpose of the stripes, and it's a callback to Hispanic textiles. There's something called the yarn dyed, kind of the stripes, and you
Mhm.
see it. And he mentioned in particular Baja hoodies. And actually, I had a buddy in college that had one of these hoodies, and so yeah, so I can see what he's talking about. So it's a very subtle callback to like that surf culture, and for
Sure.
me, the touch there is a little too subtle.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you need to have something that is just out there. Oh, this is Hispanic or this is Asian or whatever, right? You don't want that either for a third jersey necessarily. But it was maybe a little too subtle for me. And that's of course it's a hard thing to find something that is not too subtle, but it doesn't
Mhm.
seem too in your face either. And so I don't know if they found that there with in terms of that cultural touch.
Yeah.
Um, they also mentioned too that they wanted a jersey that appeals to kind of Northern California, so that's why they included the
The
Northern
patch.
California Stadium Series patch from 2015. But that again, I think there could have been more done there. I'm not sure how that to do it without being too like overstated about it, like having like a silhouette of the Golden Gate Bridge on your jersey.
Yeah.
That's overstated, right? And so
Sure.
and so, of course, it's good that they didn't necessarily have that. Not criticizing the Warriors who do, but it wouldn't fit for the San Jose Sharks to have an image of the Golden Gate Bridge on their jersey. So I'm not sure about the execution of it, but
I
the
think
idea
it'll
of using a logo works for me though. So
yeah, I think it'll grow on us too.
mm,
I have a feeling it's gonna look a little bit better on the ice, like in actual games. I think it'll look pretty good, pretty slick, hopefully. And I remember
yeah,
that feeling the same way with the change of the new teal. I think last year, 2 years ago, it was like a
last
slightly
year,
different last year.
yeah, the all teal look, yeah.
Yeah, like at the beginning, I was like, "Oh God, it's a lot of teal," and then man, it's kind of growing on me. Like I kind of like it. Um,
But yeah, I'll end my thought in terms of just the I feel like I feel like the this jersey again is not necessarily made for the diehard Sharks fan watches every game. It's something new,
mhm,
and I think that is I think in general for not just I guess hockey fan, but I think hockey in particular is a sport that is insular that way. That I find that less open to these things. That yeah, I guess I would say that I appreciate more the effort that they're making. That
sure.
they didn't just go with like again, the jersey, they could have made like, and I said it before, like the first retro for example, that should have been a gray heritage jersey, and they would have
Mhm,
sold well among the diehards. But would that have appealed to um just a average Northern California person? Maybe not as much, and I think that's part of the calculation. I know one thing I asked Doug, and he gave a very clear answer to. I asked him why they opted for black instead of gray because I think some fans would I think the diehard fans are tired of seeing black in
mhm,
as a primary color in jerseys, but
sure.
he just Doug it flat out. Black sells better, and the players like it more too. And I actually talked with. I'm gonna come out with it. I think after or when the jersey debuts on February 17th. But I asked Nico Stern because Nico was modeling the jersey. He modeled along with Couture and Kakinen, State of the Sharks, I asked him why black appeals to players more than the gray, and he actually repeated, and Nico I think mentioned that he studied marketing at school, so everything Nico said was exactly what Doug said, and he hadn't even read the Doug Benson interview before.
Wow.
He had an understanding of that, and so I think again, just the fan the jersey was made for beyond the diehard fan, and I do think sometimes diehard fans have trouble, I guess, with that concept that like hockey wants to appeal to more than your band wants to appeal to. They want to open stadiums. They don't want to just be in a 16,000 arena. They want to play at Levi Stadium, not just for one game like the Sharks did a long time ago, but they want to have a week of shows at Levi Stadium or wherever, Wembley or whatever, right? And so um so I think that's the idea of it. And again, I don't mind the idea. I think the execution, like I said, I don't love it. I If I were a fan, I wouldn't buy it. But again, like we talked about last week, the jersey's not made for me either. So
That's right.
fan or writer or whatever. So
I'd be curious what there are other not to put our viewers onto different to podcasts. I mean, you guys know all the San Jose Sharks podcasts. There are
you can
other
go to my different
podcasts.
podcast.
Yeah, they can go to their podcasts. It's fine.
Yeah.
But there are other podcasts that are very good at covering Sharks jerseys that I wonder what their thoughts are on this, because I'm not a jersey expert by any means at all. Like I like jerseys. I have plenty of jerseys, but I don't like a lot of people go really in depth in them, have like catalogs, and they know exactly what year and exactly what make and like all these things about jerseys, and never really been my thing.
Mhm.
But I wonder what a few other certain San Jose Sharks podcasts have to say about the jerseys. So I'll have to take
Yeah.
a look and see. I haven't watched it yet, but maybe I'll
Okay.
look around because
Yeah.
they spend a long time on the jerseys and reviewing them and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, but I like it. I'll buy it probably.
Okay.
That
There you go.
or an AHL All-Star jersey for Gushchin if Gushchin plays in the AHL All-Star game.
Oh, there's another segue there.
Bam! Look at this. We're getting better at this, man. I mean, I think we have injuries for both the NHL and AHL, but I guess we can talk
Major
about
ones, yeah.
We'll talk about Goose because we just brought it up, but he got taken out of the game yesterday, right?
He left the
Or
game
yeah,
after the first period, upper body injury. I'm not
yeah.
sure when it happened because Gushin played the very last shift of the first period, and I just observing, didn't see anything really off about him, but he was nowhere to be found at the beginning of the second period. He missed
hmm
some power plays, and he started to figure something's going on. And yeah, he never came back after that. And so there is some kind of injury. Still waiting to find out more. That's what is my understanding right now. That it's not certain if he will be available for the All Star game February 4th and 5th. But it hasn't been rolled out yet either, which I guess so. We'll see, and so I think we'll find out more in the coming days, and I'll be on that story because obviously, he's the Barracudas right now. He's their lone All Star. He's the most deserving All Star. He deserves it. From what I've heard, I think I can say this. I believe his dad is actually coming from Russia to watch him, and so it would be shame if Goose couldn't play. And so we'll see. Like I said, I'll be on that story. And I also I was looking at, I didn't realize that the Barracuda have such a rugged, unforgiving schedule. They play in Abbotsford on the second and the third, and then they got to
Mm.
come back for at least Gushin or whoever is in the All Star game has to come back for
hmm
that on the fourth and the fifth. So that's pretty crazy. But
I I have no knowledge of the injury, and I actually saw that first period. And he looked fine, so I don't know what
yeah, I didn't see
exactly
anything.
happened. Um, but anyway, I have no knowledge of the injury, but he's gonna come back. He'll be fine.
Okay,
That's my prediction.
let's hope so. Let's hope
Yeah,
so.
let's hope
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, because
Otherwise, Leon Gavanka or Shakir Mukhamadullin will have to
yeah,
change their plans. So
yeah, they gotta be our representative for the All-Star game, which would
yeah,
be
you want someone
cool
to get
either way.
excited about. Yeah, you want something for fan base get that they can rally behind.
No.
Yeah, a kind of prospect.
Uh,
So
Injury, other I guess AHL stuff. Bordalo came back tonight, scored a goal.
yeah, yeah. That's
yourself.
good. And Gavanka, McCarthy said that Gavanka's missed the last couple of games with the upper body injury, and
Mhm.
so they're hoping that he is ready for the weekend series against Abbotsford. And
Sure.
so we'll see. Hopefully, that's a lot of offense for them too, Gushin and Gavanka. So hopefully, both of them come back. On the NHL side, we have a lot of injuries too. Just a quick run through. Basically, Granlund, Ferraro, and Thrun are all doing pretty well considering they're injured. It could have been worse for all of them, it seems like. But I think that there's a lot of optimism that they'll be back right after the All Star, the All Star / bye week, the 13 days the Sharks have off. And so if they do come back, then the Sharks are going to be a pretty healthy team there. And so hopefully they do all come back. And let's see, the last other injury that seems close is Jacob McDonald. He seems close. McDonald hype train. Hopefully that starts up again.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's your injury update. Always seems to be a lot of injuries with the Sharks
Yeah.
this year.
Let's see who came off of it. Ty Emberson came
Emerson
back.
came off. Yep.
Sturm, Couture all came off this week.
Yeah.
Well,
We talked
week or
about. Didn't
two.
we talk about Couture already? I thought we talked about a lot.
We
Yeah,
did.
because he
We
came
did.
back during the Anaheim game. So and Sturm
Yeah,
too. So
we did. Just make sure that we didn't miss anybody. I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Now the big topic. We've been rambling for like 40 minutes on little things. So Grier had like a media availability this week, right? Kind of
oh,
the state of the
yes, he
Sharks.
did. So there's
Yes.
the before we get to the sort of the main thing we're going to talk about, the realistic path for the Sharks to be competitive by 2025, 26. Is there anything else from Greer's availability, which you can find the full availability on San Jose Hockey Now?
Yep.
Anything else you want to touch on before we get to the meat, I guess?
I guess a few things.
Mhm.
The Will Smith thing was interesting. Will Smith basically the question was kind of phrased as was awkward, right? Like I didn't hear it, but it was kind of a why isn't Will Smith in the NHL? He's our fourth overall
Oh,
pick. What about
that
Patrick
was.
Marleau?
By the way,
Um,
that was a season ticket holder question. That wasn't from one
yeah,
of the
that
media
wasn't
members.
from Shang.
That
It
was
wasn't
not from me.
Shang and a little mustache in the corner or something like that.
Shang in a
Um,
old school a
yeah,
heritage jersey.
yeah, it wasn't me in a top hat. Like, why isn't Will Smith? Anyway, so yeah, it kind of put Greer, I guess, in like an awkward situation where he had to answer why Will Smith wasn't in the NHL, which is a strange thing to have to ask for any 18-year-old, because like the NHL is different than most sports. Like you don't go straight from the draft to playing in your league very often in the NHL. So he kind of put him on the back burner. Basically, put it down to his body isn't there all the way. He has a lot of skill, but he's still
He said
underdeveloped
as much
physically.
skill as Carlson and Fantilli. I actually really loved, and I mentioned that in one of my stories. I loved how he stood up for Will. We have
Hmm.
to remember, of course, everyone listening knows that it's the exception and not the rule, obviously,
Yep.
for 18-year-old to be in the NHL. So guys like Bedard and Fantilli and Carlson and Marlowe, those are the exceptions, right?
By
And
far.
so
Yep.
yeah, by far. And so I love that he just stood up and said he's every bit as skilled, and he also is careful not to say Bedard because he's not stupid. He's not going to overstate his case either. But
Hmm.
he talked about just pure skill that Smith is
Sure.
right there with those guys with picks 2 and 3 of the draft. But yeah, his body is not quite as developed, and just gotta have patience. Let him work into his body more. But Greer has that streak though. He did that actually when they hired Quinn, and actually I think it was me. I asked about um sort of the reputation that Quinn had before that of not handling young players well. And I've debunked that plenty of times myself, but I still was curious what he said about it though, what Quinn would say about it, that reputation, and what Greer might say about it. And Greer, I don't remember exactly the circumstance. I gotta look back at the story, but Greer stood up for his guy. And Greer, of course, was known as that type of player when he played, that he would stand up for his guys. And so I kind of I like, even though the question was not a good question in a lot of ways. Um, it's still a paying customer, a season ticket holder, and you got to hear him out.
Yeah.
And you're on your defense a little bit, but you stand up for your guy, and that's what he did there. And so I
Yeah.
like kind of just Grier being put in that position and him standing on it and standing up for his guy. Like, yeah, I think it showed something there.
Yeah, and it shows he still has tons and tons of faith in Will Smith, and it's not
Hmm.
like Will Smith has done anything other than have he's made everybody kind of believe in that faith a little bit. He had a great World Juniors where he improved throughout the more difficult rounds. He's going back to college and he's doing
He's just
great. He
not in
just had
NHL, so
Yeah, he's just not in the NHL. He had 2 points tonight. He had the game winning goal against BU. Um, so Will Smith's fine. I I think people are going to be um a little bit down on it because he's not Fantilli, Carlson, and Bedard, but Carlson was getting nights off multiple times throughout the season just because the Ducks didn't want to rush him, so they're just putting him on the bench for a while. Bedard got injured; he's been out for weeks. Like it's a tough league, and give
well,
Will Smith some time.
I will say one thing. Let me speak up for that fan and just for the fans in general. And I'm not saying that I have the right take on this because I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan anymore. But I did mention it in my story that I feel like the Q&As, the season ticket holders don't get enough questions in.
Sure,
They usually the way they had this one was like 45 minutes with a panel discussion. Honestly, they're pretty soft questions, right? That are being asked of them, which I understand. It's a Sharks
sure.
moderated panel. I don't expect anything more. I don't
Hmm.
expect them to be interrogated when they're up there. So I'm not saying that's a negative. That's to be expected. And then
Sure.
about 20 minutes of fan season ticket holder questions, and then they had the jersey unveiling. And I've been to a couple of these events, and it seems to be sort of par for course that the season ticket holders don't get a lot of questions. And I have seen some comments. Actually, I haven't replied yet, but Amy, who is a loyal reader, I don't know if she listens to the podcast too, but thank you for your comment. I saw her comment, and she said that yeah, they send these like she feels like she's heard as a fan, and so maybe I'm wrong about it, but wrong about what I'm about to say, but I think it's really important to make the fans feel like they're being heard, even if what
Sure.
they say might be unfocused or just kind of not correct, right? And so so in terms of what this fan was saying,
Hmm.
if you get to the core of it, it's just a Sharks fan base that needs hope so badly
This
that
is fair.
they
Yeah.
do, right? Like so to see if you could see a Carlson out there as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old doing what he's done for Anaheim,
Yeah.
even if it's like an abbreviated schedule, that brings
Hmm.
so much to the fan base, right? Especially the fan base that has seen Sharks miss the playoffs. Now it's going to be 5 straight years. Look at all the joy that you get when you see Eklund do something
It's
do
true.
something good, right? And of course, the kind of for like maybe the not as sort of up on it fan, like that the bloom is off of Eklund a little bit because he didn't step in as a 19-year-old and dominate or whatever, right?
Hmm.
But for some fans though, yeah, like it just you need as much hope as possible. And I'm not saying that Mike did anything wrong with sort of like he drafted the guy he should have drafted. Look, if the Sharks had drafted Michkov like some people want, that'd be 3 years from now. So I
It's
think
true. Well,
Smith should be here sooner than 3 years, right? Or two,
yeah,
right?
two
Yeah.
more years after this one, so
But we would still project Smith to be here sooner.
probably.
But anyway, just from that fan's point of view, though, that yeah, the a lot of fans asked Mike about the timeline, and Mike couldn't answer. And Mike gave the best answer he could about kind of 2 or 3 years, hoping that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And
One more
it
thing
was
about
funny.
Will
It was
Smith
Mhm.
before we get into
Yeah.
the
Go ahead.
timeline is the signing bit about when is Will going to sign out of college,
Hmm.
because I thought that was an interesting answer too.
Hmm.
We talked about a little bit about this before the podcast, but the whole Cutter Gauthier trade basically kind of changed how GMs are thinking about what to
Well,
do with these
that's not what
guys.
I don't know about that. It's more
Sure.
about it's a reminder of how much power the college kids have is
Yeah.
more what I'm saying. Not that the Gote trade will change the kind of the dynamic of anything.
I don't
Like
think it
that
will
power.
either. I meant
Yeah,
that's not what I meant.
Cutter had that power 5 years ago or whatever if he
I
came out
meant
of college
that
or whatever. So
maybe it's now kind of like maybe put a little bit of a thing in GM's mind about how to approach these situations with the college kids. Maybe,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that
maybe,
part of it. I mean, I think like I said, the college kids always had a lot of power. So
yeah.
um
But
yeah, so
this
I'm
was
not sure
a
about that part of it. Yeah.
Anyway, but the point is that Greer's response was kind of like, "We'll see how it goes, and if he wants to come
Yeah.
out, cool, we'll do it," kind of thing, or we'll kind of come together and we'll
Yeah, I don't
see
know if
if
he
he
quite said
wants
that
to.
either, but
Kinda,
I do kind of see that it's probably trending that way. That again, he has Will has a ton of power,
hmm
so yeah, and if you have that power, exercise it. More power to you, and
yeah,
so yeah, so. But anyway, though, anyway, the final point I was going to make though about the fan base there is that
hmm
even though the questions were repetitive, and Amy mentioned that, yeah, three people asked about the timeline and Mike couldn't answer, and I get that part, that like for the more for the San Jose Hockey Now reader, the more educated San Jose Hockey Now reader, some of these questions might seem repetitive and
sure,
not focused, right? And I get that's tiring, but it also speaks to, again, just the how beaten down the fan base is, how much they need hope, and so I guess what I'm saying is that I don't blame the guy who asked that, because if you're a Sharks fan, you've been a Sharks fan for a long time. I think he said he's been a fan since sometime in the 90s or something like that, right? And the product you're seeing on ice doesn't inspire a lot of hope. At least if
Mhm.
you're just watching kind of casually, even if you are a longtime fan, but you're not knee deep into prospects. You don't know your Daniil Gushins from your Thomas Gregors, from your Noah Gregors or whatever, right? You don't know
Mm,
you don't know hide and hair of those guys, or you don't know so much about them. You just see their
sure,
stats a little bit. That man, it's a fan base that has been through it the last few years. So I get the frustration, and that's why yeah, like sometimes I do think that the fans should have a little, even if the questions were repetitive, like that's your fan base. Those are the guys who are paying through thick and thin, and they should feel heard, and maybe they do, and my interpretation is wrong of it, but yeah, anyway, I think there's a lot going on with these kind of state of the union kind of things, that's not as simple as, oh, that's a bad question, but
yeah.
where is that question coming from? And I think it's coming from a fan base that is really, like I said, very down right now, so very, very down.
Want some hope,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Um, and I get it. It's just it was an interesting question for
It
sure,
was.
and sometimes that gives you interesting answers.
And
Greer could have
that's what
also
I'm
just been
saying.
like, he
Yeah.
could have also just been like, players take different times to develop, and that was the end of the question.
Yeah, he
That's not
didn't
what he
have to
said.
say like he is
Yeah.
as he's as good, or he's as skilled. I think he's as skilled
Yeah.
as Fantilli and Carlson. That was like an honest moment from
hmm
Greer, that's probably why they drafted him, because that's what they see. That's sort of his that's what they're projecting of him. So
Yeah. It'll be and he mentioned, yeah, like the Will Smith coming out of college, that he has some things to accomplish, right? Like he wants to win the national championship, he
mhm.
wants to do the bean pod, he has all these things that he wants to do in college. So this next like 2-3 months, all of those things are going to happen. And we'll see just how far BC gets in this whole thing too, because if they win everything, they win the championship. Is that like all he wants to do and he's out? Maybe. Or it might come down to like they don't win it, they get this close and they don't get there. He goes back for another year, and then he takes Leonard and Perot with him, and they're the new top line for BC next year. So because Cutter's gonna come out and
Right.
join the Ducks, so we'll see. Any possibility could happen between those two. And then look at Logan Cooley this year. Logan Cooley was supposed to go back to college, and then he last minute changed his mind and was like, I'm gonna go play in the NHL.
Yeah.
And
Again,
that
the
was
player has a lot of power in the NCAA, so it's just
yeah.
the reality of the situation. So
Yeah, my hockey prospect analyst mind would want him to go
mhm.
back to college. My Sharks fandom mind would want him to come to the Sharks
You
as
need
soon as
hope too,
possible.
right?
I want hope, and also I
Yeah.
worry. Like as soon as you have them signed, they're and RFA till they're 26. Like you don't have the Cutter Gauthier situation anymore. You don't have
Right.
to try and find a scramble for a trade for Will Smith or whatever. Not that any of that's ever like likely, because we haven't heard any of that stuff at all. But you know, my panicked mind would like him here. But that's it. So that's what I found interesting from the transcript, other than just some of the when he wants the Sharks to be competitive by questions towards the end there,
Mhm.
which were interesting. Which is kind of what spawned our topic here for today.
Sure.
Um, yeah. What is the realistic way to get these Sharks from horrible to not so horrible in span of like 1.5 seasons, basically?
Yeah.
Because like this year and then one more season after this.
So by 25, 26, and the reason why I chose 2025, 26 is if you go back to what Mike said, Mike basically said 2 to 3 years to be sort of in the playoff hunt, to be in it, kind of. Again, not in the playoffs necessarily. Of course, they'd love
Hmm.
that, but that they're kind of in the conversation at least. And that, of course, 2025, 26 is a couple years from now. And that coincides, of course, with a couple of very important developments with the Sharks. First, and we talked about this back with the Eric Carlson trade, if you remember. And I wondered, and a lot of people wondered, why the Sharks retain so little. They
Hmm.
retained just 1.5 million of Carlson's $11 million contract. They could have retained half of it. That would have been 5.75 AAV for 4 more years, I think, after this one. And so why didn't they do that and get more in return, maybe get a greater package of assets back, all that kind of stuff, right? So why did they choose to retain so little on Carlson's deal? And I'm sorry, it's 3 more years after this one, so four, including this year.
Hmm.
And so you looked at the contracts that they got back, the kind of the unpleasant contracts that they got back from Montreal and Pittsburgh. Obviously, it's the Granlund 2 years left. It's actually turned out to be a pretty good acquisition there. Ruda 2 years left at 2.75 million AAV, and Hoffman expiring this year at 4.5. And so think to yourself, okay, once all those contracts leave your books in 2 years, you have a ton of cap space because you didn't retain a lot on Carlson.
Yep.
And the other thing to throw in there, it's just about the same timeline, but not quite. Vlasic's contract expires after the 2025-26 season. So you're suddenly going to be flush with money, basically, with cap space in 2 to 3 years. The other part of it, too, that we can't forget is Hasso. And we talked with Corey Masisak last week about his wonderful Hasso Plotner story. But we talked about, too, that there was a belief for a while that Hasso would never rebuild. He never wanted to. That he's told people that I'm too old to rebuild. Hasso just turned 80. Perfectly understandable if you're owner of the Sharks and you're 80s, you're 80 years old. You don't want to wait through. You don't want to wait through a 5 year rebuild if you can avoid it
Hmm.
for sure, right?
Hmm.
And so how did Mike get the job as GM of the Sharks? And basically, he instituted a rebuild from basically the beginning. He took over, and there was some thought that okay, it's not going to be a rebuild. There was scuttlebutt over the summer before Mike was hired that GM candidates didn't want to be interviewed because they were afraid of a mandate to win with this
Yeah.
team, with this Sharks team, right? And but Mike, one of his first moves was to trade Brent Burns off. Granted, Burns wanted to leave, but this was basically a rebuild move. And then it's continued since then with the trades of Timo Meyer, of Eric Carlson. And so this is clear what we're in, even if they still don't like to use the word. I'll say the difference now is that they don't object to the word being used. When you say the word rebuild, they objected to it. They would object
Yep.
to it 2, 3 years ago. It's not being objected to anymore. They know what they're in, even if they don't want to say it. And we could talk about why they don't want to say it. That's a whole nother podcast or article or whatever, but not the point here. But the point is that they are in a rebuild, but if you
Yeah.
couple that with Hassel's desire to win, then you got to tell Hassel, you got to make him believe that you can. I think it makes sense at least that I don't know this for a fact, but you got to make him believe that you can win relatively soon. And what's the soonest you can do this realistically without as Michael like to say, without you don't not trying to do it by skipping steps necessarily, but you're trying to do it slowly, methodically, but maybe just a little faster. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build a team that is competitive in a reasonably quick time, but not too quick where they're spending money on old free agents or
Yep.
trading their prospects off for guys who are 24 or 23, or just guys that can play right now but don't have the upside. They're not, or signing guys like Timo Meyer to long contracts when it's not quite in the window. Timo will be early 30, I think, early 30s when this window hits. So maybe you don't see Timo's game aging well, his power forward game aging well, and so it's like maybe it's not a great idea to keep him around, to invest 8 years in a Timo Meyer. And so anyway, so I think the idea is that things sort of crest there.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the important thing to say is, like, I don't think this is like 2025, 2026 is going to be
Hmm.
the year that we make the playoffs,
Right.
or the only year that, like, this is probably the start of the trying kind of thing, like the
Right, and
start
it's
of
very
the,
general too. When I say 25,
yeah.
26, it's like Mike said 2 to 3 years. So 3 years could be 2026, 27 after Vlasic's contract expires. So I'm not, so
So
yeah, don't hold me to the date. I just
to
want to
just
give
the
you a
one
general
year.
sense. And
And I
so
said
anyway,
this too when Carlson got traded. Was like,
yeah.
I thought it was very smart, just because they didn't have to, like, they could have retained half and maybe gotten a
Mhm.
little bit more. But I liked the fact that we don't have to worry about Carlson in 2 years. Like, there's no more, that era of the Sharks doesn't have to hang over your head
Yeah.
when, like, because it still would be for the next however many years if he was retaining $5.5 million every year. Like, it still would kind of hang over a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that it's a signal too that the rebuild's going to go all the way to that
Hmm.
time kind of. And
Yeah.
I think that they are hoping, and they've said it too. They said it after the Meyer trade. I think Mike said something to the point like, I think we'll be a little more competitive sooner than people expect. And
Sure.
so I think his message has been fairly consistent. I don't think there's been too much of a deviation in terms of
Hmm.
what Mike has said, really from day one that he was hired. Even though we were under impression that they might do more to win, I don't think he's ever said anything that really suggests that that's sort of his direction. And also, too, Corey made a really good point last week that if the Sharks were better last year, as maybe Mike had hoped to, if that had happened, that maybe they would approach things differently. Maybe they would have tried to keep Timo and keep Eric and all that kind of stuff, right? If the
Yeah.
team showed on the ice that maybe they're a little bit closer than they expected. But I think once those things didn't happen, Mike was really quick. And when they started off slow last year, they lost their first 5 games. In a month, in November, Mike was already in the news saying, "Yeah, everybody's available except for Tommy." If you remember that from last
Yep.
year. And so it was a very really quick pivot once they realized, yeah, this team isn't going to be it. So, and maybe that's what they had to show Hassel, like, look, this team isn't it. Again, we went with the same team. Eric scored 100 points, and we still suck. Like, this isn't going to work. So we got to get off this
Yeah.
ride. So anyway, the way that I'm going to kind of break down sort of the realistic path for the Sharks is by position.
Hmm.
And we're going to go with goal, defense, forwards, and we'll start in goal. And the goalie, I think, is going to be interesting with the Sharks in a couple of years, obviously, because they have nobody right now in the system that you look at right now and you think, oh, this guy is a future NHL guy. Makiniemi can't stay healthy. Krona, Romanov, they look pretty raw out there, at least at the moment. And so what's got to work out for the Sharks to be competitive in a couple of years? It's probably got to be Blackwood because there's
I
there's no
mean,
one behind him.
yeah, at this moment, what we can see on the depth chart, unless you're picking names out of a hat from around the NHL, it's
Right.
literally just Blackwood.
Right.
Um,
And Mike did allude to that in the state of the Sharks. The fans asked him, and he said, and Quinn has said the same thing, that they believe that Blackwood can be a lead goalie, that he has that talent. I mentioned before that Blackwood is Grier acquired him. He did
mhm,
not acquire Kakinen. He didn't acquire Aiden Hill. Um, he didn't acquire James Reimer, of course, either. So those aren't his guys. Blackwood is his acquisition, and I think that Blackwood is going to get a chance to be that guy, to be hopefully that lead guy that people projected out of him
Yeah.
when he was sort of at the height of his prospectdom with the Devils, that he was going to be a top 10 goalie, future Team Canada starter. We said that many times, that people did see that ceiling for him. And if it's not Blackwood, I think it's fine, because there was something about the goaltending position that it's the sort of the goaltending is voodoo. It's the most kind of random position in terms of who is going to be your starter, who is your goalie of the future, right? If you look at some of the top guys around the league, Shesterkin, Sorokin, Saros, Hellebuck, they're all late picks. When they were drafted, no one thought they were going to be their team's goalie of the future. And
Yeah.
so, will the Sharks draft somebody this year to that is that guy? You never know. There's
Mhm.
also guys like Binnington that maybe not a lead goalie, but he's been St. Louis's number one guy for a number of years. Obviously, won them the Stanley Cup, came out of nowhere. And so goaltending is one of those weird things where
Yeah.
you can find somebody as valuable as a position as it is. You can roll the dice and find somebody. Unlike a top 4 defenseman or top 6 center, those you don't find on a garbage heap or for a bargain price usually. But
Like Aiden Hill won a Stanley Cup.
Aiden Hill is a good example of that
He's like
too.
a
Yep.
what was it, fourth round pick we got from him,
Fourth round pick. Yeah.
basically. And
Mhm.
then in Arizona, Connor Ingram's having an amazing year. He was on waivers last year. Like,
Yep.
there's these guys that, like, you just have to keep trying, and you just have to keep like identifying, obviously, with your goalie scouts, and you just have to keep finding that value in players, because goalies are voodoo, and unless you have this guy that Shesterkin, Sorokin, Vasilevsky, all these guys, like, that for sure that they are, like we said this before, that are
Yeah.
superstar goalies. You just got to keep trying, and I think you mold the team around the goaltender, or you mold the team first, and then you find your goalie at some point, kind of
Right.
thing. Unless you happen to
Reimer.
just, yeah.
Reimer a
Mhm.
couple years ago was that guy for the Sharks too. Just signed to like a $2.1 million
Sure.
contract. He was brilliant his first couple of months as a Shark. So in a way, even though there isn't really a lot of depth behind Blackwood and Kakinen right now,
Mhm.
that you don't have to worry about it too much in a couple of years, because kind of most likely, along with wingers, that you can kind of fill that spot a little bit out of nowhere. And so I'm not too worried about that part of it in goal. Um, so moving on to defense. Defense is interesting.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm doing a lot of projecting here in terms of, again, this is what it's going to take. This is realistic, but it's also a lot of projecting. And so I'm projecting that you need a Thrun and Mukhamadullin to really hit and to be legit top 4 defensemen. They don't need to be your number 1 defenseman, because I don't think they have that kind of projection or talent. So let's be realistic about it. But can they be? I think Mukhamadullin might have a ceiling of a number 2, but can he be at least a solid middle pairing? Can Thrun be a solid middle pairing? Let's say you
Mhm.
keep Ferraro, because Ferraro has shown, especially this season, the kind of a more complete game that he can be legit. I think in your top 4 too. And obviously, you still need a true number 1 here. But if he can't get that true number 1, Victor Hedman in his prime, those guys are really hard to get, right? Only a handful of those
Sure.
guys. You can still go with sort of a quality depth defense, right? Like
Mhm.
if you start with Ferraro, Thrun, and Mukhamadullin, and maybe if you think that's a credible start to the top 4, and you add a couple more guys, so you have 5, 6 top 4 defensemen, instead of just having 4, right? Or instead of having like a elite top pairing and then decent middle
Sure.
pairing and then sort of a whatever bottom pairing, have depth, have 60 minutes of a top 4 guy, top 4 pairing out there, right? And so that's I think a workaround to not having a true number 1. And so this is somewhere where I could see the Sharks maybe sooner than later trading or signing someone to help stabilize their top 4 even more. So you're hoping by 25, 26 that Farrell is very established, that Thrun, Mukhamadullin are mature beyond their years and playing top 4 quality hockey. And so earlier this season, there was kind of a interesting rumor of Mike Grier being interested in a Noel Hannafin. Hannafin,
Mhm.
27 at the time, he's going to be a UFA. And so I'm not saying that Hannafin is the perfect guy, but a guy like that who is about the right age range, a guy that can help kind of stabilize your defense. Suddenly, then you have again, then you have you're hoping 4 or 5 top four guys, and so I think that could be the direction where we start to see a more competitive Sharks team, because right now Thrun, Mukhamadullin obviously aren't ready for playoff caliber hockey. I think
Yeah.
Ferraro can be, but we have no evidence of that, obviously, because he's played on all bad teams since he has debuted in NHL. But if you get the growth you project out of a Thrun and Mukhamadullin, and you add Ferraro to there, then again that maybe is the makings of a decent. Again, it won't be one of the best defenses in the league, but a decent top four defense. Then we start talking about, again, maybe competing more. And with your 20, I think another part of it too is the draft, this year's draft, right? Who you draft. And if you don't get the number one pick and you don't get Celebrini, Sharks will obviously still end up with a really high pick. And like you mentioned before, Keegan, this is a very defensive deep
Yep.
draft. And so you got to find your number one there. That's probably the spot where you got to find your
Yeah.
Heiskanen or your Makar, or that young guy that can. Again, we're talking about the Sharks being competitive in just 2 years from now. So it's got to be somebody that can pretty much slide in there as a 19, 20-year-old and be
Yeah.
a top pairing defenseman, cider. So it's rare, but I've just thrown out 3 names there. It can happen. So you'll need a hit with that pick if it's not
Celebrini.
Celebrini.
No, so
And
I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, though, so that people don't, like, if we don't get Celebrini, there is still some light at the end of the tunnel, because this is a position of need for the Sharks in
right,
general, and
absolutely.
there's so many guys in that range of the draft that you can pick from that are seemingly like possible number one defenseman in the NHL, which is rare.
Who's
Like,
your pick now, by the way? If
um,
you're looking for immediate impact top pairing guy, which is a lot to ask for, but who's your pick right now? If, let's say the Sharks end up with number two, they lose
mm,
the number one pick.
immediate impact.
Mhm.
Oh man,
Maybe not
maybe
like
within 2 years,
next
I'd
year, but
say.
within 2 years, yeah.
I'd say Lev Shanov. Lev Shanov's been my
Okay,
guy for a
that's your
while. I
guy. Okay.
think he has everything that like makes him able to be a number one defenseman in the NHL, and he's raw. He's not as like polished. He's playing in college. He's doing extremely well in college right now, but he has the size. He's got the skills. He's got the brain offensively. His defense is a little bit shaky at times because he's still learning, but
Mhm.
he's not like it's not like Merkley unfixable.
Sure,
It's
sure.
still fine. So I think he's kind of like the one that I would pick, but there are a lot. So like Iov's
Okay.
great. Parikh is he's not very big, but he's like I think he's like 6 foot. He's not small
Mhm.
either, but he's insane in how he creates like shots from the point. And then Buyam is having the best defenseman college season ever, I think, or
Mhm.
something like that. And he's draft eligible, which is extremely rare. But his game is a lot of um, activations and stuff that I don't know if it's all like translatable just yet. But there's a lot of good options, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, and I think if you're gonna pick one, you're not gonna go wrong with a bunch. There's Carter Yakimchuk, who's super good. He's probably gonna be more in like the 10-15 range. I've
Mhm.
watched a lot of games of his. I've liked his game too. He's a little slower is the thing, but again, big guy, great hands for his size. He just has a little bit of clunky feet compared to everybody else, but not terrible either. But anyway, there's a lot. And you also have the Penguins pick, which might be in that 10 to 20
Yeah,
range too.
maybe you get that, you get your defenseman there, right? And you get a
Yeah.
Celebrini. That's what you're hoping for, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I know I'm asking you guys to do a lot of imagining here, but
It's a
that's
lot
what
of
this exercise
imagination.
is for, right? Like what is Mike seeing? This is the reason why I would even ask this. If
Hmm.
I'm trying to be realistic, and so if this is what Mike is trying to sell you guys, then okay, let's see how it can happen, right? And it has to be, of course, realistic. We're not asking Henry Thrun to be Miro Heiskanen, because that's just
Hmm.
stupid. That's not fair to Henry, right? And so what can happen. It's okay. So if you start to imagine this, right? Let's say you don't get the number one pick. Let's say Lushunov is a cider guy. A guy can step in and be a top carrying guy. Or these are big ifs. But let's say that you found your true number one in a Lushunov, right? Let's say
Mhm.
Ferraro, Thrun, Mukhamadullin. And let's say again you sign a veteran who is a great locker room guy, legit top four guy, is in a good age range, right? 27, 28. So then that suddenly you have five defensemen there that kind of fill out your top four, and this is not counting any of the other prospects like that who might hit like a Havlit, a Furlong, etc., right?
Mhm.
And also to the guys that the Sharks already have that can maybe improve and make them and make themselves a kind of a must keep guy like an Emberson or a Hotiuk or somebody like that too, right? A little bit rawer, maybe not quite as much ceiling, but maybe they can help round out your bottom pairing, or even a Matt Benning who still might be here. And suddenly your defense looks, I think, way more intriguing than this year's defense.
Yeah. The Bob McKenzie's list came out this week, and
Hmm.
Silyaev came out at number 2, and Levshunov came out at number 3
Mm,
on his list. So,
okay.
and that's above like Yzerman, who's kind of dropping a little bit, and then
Yeah, Eisenman's
Demidov, who
dropping.
came
Yeah.
out at 6. Although Demidov's had like 2 weeks that have been insane in the MHL. He's like putting up like 20 points in 6 games or something ridiculous, or what, I don't remember what it is, but anyway, point is like there's defensemen that are right there. And then around the Penguins pick, you've got Parikh and
Hmm.
Buyum, Juracek, Yakimchuk, all around there. And Dickinson is one that's probably going to go top 10. He's
Hmm.
been thrown around. He's like your all-arounder
Yeah.
kind of guy that gets picked high just because he's good at everything. Looks like an NHLer or kind of playing in juniors kind of thing, but may not
Sure.
have the standout like offensive skills of everybody else. But
Right. Right.
anyway, I
Right.
see where you're going with this whole thing. I think the start of it, like the Ferraro, Thrawn, Mukhamadullin, and then all of the other peripheral prospects the Sharks have created on defense is a great start. But I think you're right. We're missing that one guy that
Sure.
hopefully you might get from this draft, or you might have to get from the next draft,
Right.
depending on where the Sharks finish.
Right, right. And I did want to address one point too, that just a reminder that Vlasic's buyout, let's say we get to 25, 26 and Vlasic is still on this team. His buyout is not very good. It's not even worth doing, even with just 1 year left. So if you bought him out for the 2025-26 season, that's the last season of his contract. You only get a 2.3 million savings in the first year
Mm-hmm.
of his 7 million. So that's all you get, only 2.3. And then you get 1.2 million added to the 2026-27 season. So if Vlasic manages to still be on the team at that point, I hate to say it because I don't want to disrespect a guy like that, but that might be a point where you just bury him because there is no savings really in buying him out. And so I wonder what will happen with that. But anyway, so that's one thing I wanted to add because there's always the assumption, oh, you just buy out Vlasic whenever. But of course, you got to look at the actual terms of the buyout, and again, just the 2.3 million saving. So his cap hold will still be 4.7 million if you buy him out with 1 year left. That's not a great savings at all.
Every I don't know, couple days, weeks, I look at the cap friendly page for the Sharks and then
Hmm.
remind myself that Vlasic is still on the books for however long. Like it feels like it's never ending. And
Well,
we
it is
sold.
ending though, so we're
I
getting there. And
know
so
we're
again,
getting there. We
the
sold our.
timing.
We sold our like we sold our soul for one playoff run with Marc-Edouard Vlasic, like one
Well, and
playoff
for
run.
with Eric Carlson too. So
Yeah, that's what I mean. But like his whole contract started that he had one season where he made the playoffs, and then the next 7, he's not going to make the playoffs the whole time. So it's just
yeah. Well, he
yeah,
was incredible for a decade with the Sharks, so let's not take that
he
away
had
from
it.
him. So he was underpaid for a decade. So
Yeah, and we sold our soul
um
for that, on the back end.
but yeah,
So yeah, I
I
agree. I think we should just bury him. I mean, this if he needs to be moved, like if you've got another guy like Mukhamadullin who's knocking on the door and he's not able to play because Vlasic's in his spot constantly, And Elastic's
I don't
doing
think that's going to
poorly.
happen. Mukhamadulin's too important. Yeah, that they're not going to let Vlasic block him. On the other
That's what I'm
hand, if
saying.
Vlasic is
Right.
good as your number 8, 7 guy and he's good in the room, keep him too. Again, you
Sure.
just don't get a lot of savings buying him out. You might get more. I got to look at the buyout with 2 years left.
Mhm.
Maybe the savings are worth it then. But again, the Sharks, I don't know if they're making their move until the summer of 2025. That's what it sort of is
Yeah.
trending toward. And so why hurt yourself in the years after his contract is over? And so the other thing I want to bring up too that coincides. So we mentioned the expiration of the contracts acquired in a Carlson deal,
Mhm.
retaining a lot less on a Carlson deal, the Vlasic deal expiring. As sort of coinciding within that 2-3 year, I don't. It's not a coincidence. These are planned things. So, but within that 2-3 year time frame that Mike is talking about, that and we'll address this. I think this is especially related to Logan Couture and the forwards, but Brent Burns is retained. The retention on Brent Burns expires after the 2024-25 season.
Yeah.
And so you suddenly have a spot to play with for a multi-year contract. The Sharks have just, again, reminder, Sharks have just one retention spot right now. It's tied up right now with Brent Burns up to 2024-25 and Eric Carlson to 2026-27. Carlson one, that's 40, it's too long to think about. But the Burns one is about to come off. And so once that comes off, that gives you a chance to maybe play with it a little bit more because the Sharks naturally, we get asked this all the time. Well, why don't they trade a Hurdle? Why don't they trade a Couture now? They don't want to
Mhm.
tie up every retention spot with a multi-year contract because you have no flexibility if you do that. I think you want to kind of keep one open for this year. It could be a Mike Hoffman, it could be a Kaapo Kähkönen, it could be a Luke Cunnin. Somebody's contract who's expiring, right? You can help a smooth oil, a smooth the deal out by
Yep.
by by using our retention spot for expiring contracts. So you always want to have that one available for a season. Um, but once Burns expires 2024-25, you can start next season. Basically, you can start to think about what you're going to do with that kind of open spot. And so anyway, that leads to the forwards and who's up front for this hypothetically competitive Sharks team. So let's say again that it is Blackwood and goal. Let's say that we've started up with Ferraro and Mukhamadullin and Thrun and that's Hannafin type or somebody like that, right? And so you start to get the look of a decent top four. Um,
Mhm.
and so let's hope that you win the lottery and you get Macklin Celebrini because then you have a guy that's supposed to be your number one center for the next decade, and his comp is Jonathan Taves.
Yep.
I don't think that's a comp that people are making lightly. I think they do see that out of him. And it's a reminder that Taves led the Hawks to the conference finals in his second season. Now, I'm not expecting a Celebrini to have that kind of impact on the Sharks. I don't think he's going to have the talent around him to do that. But let's say though that he can be that good in terms of just he is sort of the reincarnation of a Jonathan Tays or Anze Kopitar, that kind of type, right? So you have your 1C for the next decade, right? So what else do you need to happen here? So you obviously you need William Eklund to kind of I think that Eklund rounds out, in my opinion, as a top six, but really solid top six, good at everything. Small but plays tough. So kind of guy you want around the playoffs, even though he's a smaller guy. So not a perfect comp but like a Marcher show, but better defensively and more creative and that sort of thing, right? A more complete Ray Whitney. I don't know what have you, right? So I can see that out of William Eklund, and so if he's right there, then yeah, I think you're happy with it. He doesn't have to be a first line point per game guy. If he is a really good all around player that gives you 50, 60 points, I think you're really happy with that. And then you need Will Smith to hit too.
Yep.
And so depends on he's got to be, I think, again, in this kind of projection, he's got to hit fast too. If the Sharks are, if you want the Sharks, if you're projecting that the Sharks are competitive by the summer of 2025, and so you need a Smith to be to be step in and basically be a second line caliber player, a top 6 caliber player at least, with a first line upside maybe. And so if Smith hits, then okay, then you've got something there. The question with Smith, of course, is it going to be at center or wing? And so let's say you have Celebrini as sort of your earmarked 1C. So you still got Thomas Hurdle probably on the books. And
Mhm.
so you're hoping that within in a couple of years that Hurdle slides in well as your 2C, and we can see that as being, I think, a realistic possibility, right? Hurdle's had a pretty nice season this year, and so let's say that happens, right? And then at 3C, I think there's a little bit of question, like, could that be a Couture, or will you have used that retention slot that you've opened up with Brent Burns to trade Couture to a contender, which he may want, or he might like what the Sharks are. He might like this
Sure.
idea of growing with the Celebrini and or helping to develop a Celebrini, a Smith, and Eklund, right? And so he could conceivably, I think we talked about this before, that his game can age well into being a pretty good 3C.
I think
And
so
so he's going
too.
to be
Yeah.
overpaid at that, but still,
Severely. But, gives you a lot of depth. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I think he would. You're right. I think he would turn out to be a great 3C in like in his older years, basically, because he's a very smart player. Even if like some of the physical tools kind of age, he's still got the hockey smarts to kind of And he you're right. Maybe he does want to go to a contender or what have you. But then you've got a 1, 2, 3 of Celebrini, Hurdle, Couture, which
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
like
think a
it.
Carlson would have thought about if the Sharks had won the lottery and drafted Connor Bedard, that might have changed
Mhm.
the calculus. Maybe the Sharks are more aggressive adding people. So because you have a kind of an immediate 1C right there that you
Mhm.
can inject into the lineup. And so, well, maybe
Sure.
maybe you're a little more aggressive, and maybe Carlson thinks, oh, maybe I'll try it a year with this kid and see what happens, right? And so maybe that could happen with the Couture.
Mhm.
And then the cap hit is still high, of course, but um, a lot of the Sharks at that point will be in their ELCs. A lot of the young Sharks, so maybe it's not such a big deal. You can kind of afford to give Couture a bigger ticket because the other guys aren't making big money yet, and so
Mhm.
maybe, well, I'm not sure about that part of it with the Couture, but
Mhm.
um, but it's conceivable though that and again it does require a big if winning the lottery. If you don't win the lottery, you don't get Celebrini, then it becomes a lot harder because you don't have a 1C, just like you don't have a true number one defenseman. Also don't have a true number one center here. It could be Smith. And so that's a place where maybe Smith can slide in there, or
Yeah.
if it is a Celebrini, Hurdle, and let's say a Couture up the middle, right? Then Smith can go to wing, and then Eklund is going to be on wing, and then Zetterlund, I think, has shown that he can be at least in the top 9 conversation, middle 6 conversation, right?
Sure.
And like we mentioned, too, wingers are kind of the position where they're a little easier to add. Kind of, you
Mhm.
can find a guy in free agency for not too expensive and whatnot, right? But also too, though, and I was thinking about it too, that you're flush with this cap space, and so maybe this is if I think if we talk about sort of the grand plan within a couple of years, right? And I've written this many times, so you guys have all heard it, but in a couple of years, you'll know what you've got in Smith and Eklund, and some of the other prospects. Like, are these really foundational pieces?
Yeah.
Will someone else emerge in there? You notice I haven't mentioned the Beasted, Musty, Lund, Gushin, any of those guys, right? And the reason why I haven't mentioned them is because I've already projected Mukhamadullin, Thrun, and Eklund and Smith hitting, and that's a lot of guys to
Sure.
hit. It
It's a
really is.
lot of if.
I've looked at a lot of top 10 prospect lists. Like, you're lucky if like 2 or 3 of those guys hit. And so if you're gonna assume that I already given the Sharks, looking at our preseason top 10, right?
Yeah.
Like we're giving them Smith, Eklund, Mukhamadullin, and Thrun. And
Mhm.
it's realistic because at least with Eklund, Mukhamadullin, and Thrun, we've seen enough of them in pro hockey that like the leap for them, we know they can deal with pro hockey. Now, how good they'll be, we're not sure, but we know
Yeah.
that they can play pro hockey. But if you want to throw in, if you get so if we take these four, Smith, Eklund, Mukhamadullin, and Thrun as hitting, if you get one of Beasted, Musty, Lund, Reading off the rest of our top 10 list, Gushin, Bordalo, Haltonen, or Havlet. If you get one of them to hit, or a Furlong or Cagnoni to throw in some guys that are kind of in that conversation now, top 10 conversation. If you get one more of those guys to hit, I think you're jumping for joy. Point is that a lot of these guys are going to fall by the wayside. They may have NHL careers, but they won't be very significant. If you get
Sure.
one of these other guys to hit as like impact, top 6, top 4 defenseman, then again you're running through the streets for with joy. But anyway, though, so the wing position I think is a little empty there. So if it's not one of these prospects filling it, maybe that's where, if you've seen enough from Smith and Eklund, Celebrini slash defenseman you might draft in the 2024 draft, if it's not Celebrini, or with a Pittsburgh pick, you get a Celebrini and you get a top defensive prospect, right? Whatever, however it works, right? If you've seen enough out of these guys, you think this is a foundation I can build on. Maybe you sign. That's where you spend your money on a free agent. And Mike was very clear to say that we're not going to be signing any 30-year-olds to multi-year contracts, right? But you look at and I'm just looking, this is super science fiction, whatever. This is like,
Sure.
these guys
A lot
will
of
probably get
projection.
locked up. A lot of projecting. These guys will probably get locked up by the time we get to free agency, right? But I just took a quick look at the 2025 free agency class, right? And guys that are not in their 30s but are 28, 29, which is pushing it, but 28, 29, that could be interesting. And I look at the sort of my projected forwards list here, right? Again, some of the names that I'm projecting as hitting: Smith, Eklund, Zetterlund's in that group. Hurdle is still here. Couture is still in this group, right? There's not a lot of natural finish, so I wonder if the Sharks might look for a guy who's a bit of a finisher, right? And you have a few guys there in this free agency class: Rantanen, Draisaitl, Brock Besser, who could be interesting, and guys that kind of that piece that maybe that'll get you to the playoffs and start to again be in that competitive cycle. And another guy that's really interesting in this free agency class, and again, a lot of these guys will get locked up before then, but a Mitch Marner, who isn't so much of a finisher, but he's obviously all-around outstanding playmaker, right? So those are some interesting guys that if you add to this kind of projected Sharks lineup, that again we start to look way more interesting, right? And so again, this is all pie in the sky. So I'm not necessarily counting on it. I'm not predicting it. But in terms of what Mike is seeing, in terms of the Sharks being good in 2 to 3 years, or being competitive at least, right? Think this is kind of some of the things that have to happen. So you basically need to hit like on 4 or 5 of your current top 10 prospects, which is kind of a stretch, but it could happen. You need
Especially because
some
Eklund's already
yeah.
one of them, so he's already in. Thrawn is kind of it
Eklund is
is
in, but though, it's still an if with him, because we know he has some ability. He's shown it, right? But is
sure.
he going to be a legit top 6 forward, like a playoff caliber?
Mhm.
I predict he will be, because I like his two-way game. I like his drive, but there are a lot of guys who can put up points, but are not that useful to a
Yeah.
winning team, right? And so I'm projecting that Eklund is not that kind of guy, but he's got to reach that point though, where you can count on him for a good 50, 60 points, but also terrific two-way play. And if he can get
Mhm.
to that point, then the Sharks are golden. That's more, if he's like Logan Couture but a winger, it's not instead of a center. I think you're
Sure.
thrilled if that's what he ends up as. So they're not quite there yet. Thrawn has shown some talent, but again, he's not a legit top 4 defenseman
No.
on a playoff caliber team right now.
Nope.
Mukhamadullin certainly is not. Farrell, if there's even debate about Farrell, right? We talked about so much debate
Sure.
about Farrell, right? But Farrell is the closest to that at this point, and so you might be wishful thinking to include him in that group, but this is wishful thinking here, right? Like, what is Mike talking about? This team being competitive in 2 to 3 years. Well,
Yeah.
I think these are some of the things that have to happen.
It's a lot of ifs, and we don't
A
want to
lot
do
of ifs. A
a
lot of
lot of
ifs.
ifs. But there is some realism
There's
Right.
nothing wild except for maybe signing Leon Draisaitl or Mitch Marner. So that's a little wild, but
Yeah.
um, everything
I don't
else is
know.
sort of plausible-ish. Yeah. So
I think we're still missing a few things, and we
mhm.
already mentioned it. You're missing the 1C, you're missing the
Yeah.
1D, and then you've got to round it all out with the somebody has to kind of hit, and not just a way that we're excited. Like Musty's having a great year, and we're excited about like, oh, he's putting up all these points, but he needs to hit. He needs to get in the NHL and be a top six forward and go, oh shoot, the Sharks hit on a late round draft or late first round draft pick. Like I think something like that, not Musty specifically, but
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
has to else happen where it's like we're missing one or two more of these hits that like have to come up
I
basically.
mean, I'm not counting on it in my projections because again, I've already given
Mhm.
this 2025-26 Sharks team. I already given them Smith, Eklund, Mukhamadullin, and
I
Thrun.
know
So,
there's so many, but
so
and
that's a
that
good
kind of
number
brings
already.
me
So
to the point of the philosophy of this whole thing, and
mhm.
I'm not questioning Greer's philosophy. Like he hasn't changed it. He said it the same thing. Then like people might think we turn this around quicker, and I'm not questioning that. And I'm not questioning like the idea of what we're bringing forward with this. But when he mentioned in the thing like or in the interview, teams like Philadelphia come out of nowhere and they may make the playoffs or something like that, or like a team comes from, and they start to be in the mix, and it's like I don't know. I personally I don't want the team to be in the mix, and I get why. I want them to be like a building to a Stanley Cup winning team. I don't care if they make the playoffs in 3 years. I want them to win the friggin' cup.
All
Like
right, I
I don't
understand
want
that.
them to just be fine in 3 years and make the playoffs and then just become Ottawa or Buffalo or any of these middling rebuilding teams that never got the superstar talent, never got the hits that they
Well, they
needed
even
to
and even if
sustain.
they did, they like Eichel, they couldn't do anything with it,
They
right?
couldn't do
So
anything with it, or
yeah,
Stutzla, and they still haven't done anything with it. Or like
right.
you need there has to be A hits, and then B the hits have to actually mean something. Like I don't know. I worry about in some ways the direction if the plan is to really just try to make the playoffs again. And he's not saying that he's going to sign a bunch of vets and like do a bunch of stupid shit, but he's just trying to mold the two old sharks with some younger sharks to see if they can make something happen. And I don't know if that's personally what I would want to see. I kind of want to see a Stanley Cup.
Well, look,
But who
everyone's
knows?
goal
There's many
goal is
ways to
that
skin a cat,
there's many
there's a
ways
bunch of
to
ways.
get there. I know that
Hmm.
the most common thing people want a bit more of an aggressive rebuild.
Yeah.
Um, they may not like hearing Mike say 2 to 3 years, right? But I think, like I said, a couple elements I mentioned. Obviously, the ownership,
Yeah.
Hasso probably wanting a slightly expedited timeline. Also, too,
Mhm.
Mike's got to sell hope. This is a season ticket holders event, right? So what's he gonna, So he can say, and I grant that, and we've seen other franchises come out and be more direct about it. But so he can say, yeah, this is gonna take a while, but maybe maybe his directive is a little different where he's got, but actually think that is what they're trying to do though. And
Mhm.
so, and that's the premise of this whole episode, that they are trying to build something that it's a mix. It's sort of like it's sort of he's definitely like kind of on the high wire here where he's trying to
Mhm.
balance doing the rebuild in a responsible way,
Sure.
but also somehow get the team to be more competitive a little sooner than later. And
Mhm.
so far, I would say that he has done a pretty good job in terms of responsible rebuild. I don't think I'm trying to think if there's any moves that are just out out. There's some bad signings, but um, not too much was given up there. Oscar Lindblom, Luke Cunning trade hasn't worked out great. That's their round pick, so nothing really irresponsible. Right? It's kept the high picks. Traded back the number 11 pick, 2022 draft. So we'll see how that turns out. But nothing
Yeah.
really grossly irresponsible.
Yeah.
Um, and it's trying to balance out with trying to make a more competitive team. Actually, that's probably more my concern, that The last couple of years, the talk has been, oh, this team is going to compete, et cetera, et cetera. And last year, I'm going to give it to them that I thought that the underlying stats, the micro stats, scoring chances, all those kind of things, that they were way better than their record last year, especially
Hmm.
before they traded Timo. And I think a lot of that was, we talked about, was the goaltending. Both Reimer and Kakinen were very, very poor last year. And so I think that's more of that. But this year, though, the team is bad.
Yeah.
And so if people are telling you that this team is like, if people around you are telling you this team is good, then that's or not good, but will be a lot better than this. Then that's somewhat troubling in
Mm.
terms of just the pro evaluation there. So we'll see. So I'm kind of jury is open. And let's give credit to the pro staff too, though, that they found guys like AC Mond and Emberson that have looked pretty good, and they made good trades too, picking Zetterlund, right, of whoever New
Sure.
Jersey was offering. So they identified Zetterlund as a guy that they really wanted, and that's worked out. That's worked out quite well. Sturm was an excellent free agent signing. So it's not like they are, it's been all kind of
Yeah.
misses from them. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, yeah. So I think, and I could be wrong, but to me, you look at you look at the moves, right, and you look at that they didn't retain on Carlson, and that they took on all contracts that were going to expire within 2 years, and all of a sudden they're flush with cap space. I mean, and then he says 2 to 3 years is the hope,
Yeah.
right? And so it's still a hope. He has to hope. He has to hope that Smith, Eklund, Mukhamadullin, whoever they draft this year, 2024, like these guys hit, right.
Yep.
Or yeah, he's going to be out of a job. So I think it
Yeah.
really, that's so, again, it's hoping for like a crescendo of things, that the
Mm.
prospects that you have and have drafted, that they are everything that you build them up to be. And so you have that, and that you crescendo your young talent with cap space, and you can make something real
Yeah.
out of that. You can make a Stanley Cup contender out of that if that all kind of meets at the right time, that intersection of young cost control talent and somebody you trade for, or a free agent, or whatever. So
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, the superstar on the ELC is it's a huge thing in
Mhm.
the NHL. So if somehow you can get a superstar to be on an $800,000 or $900,000 contract or whatever, and not have to pay the big money while you're paying other established stars big money, it's worked before. It's gotten Pittsburgh and you know Chicago Stanley Cups. It happens, and I think we just got to get the superstar bit.
Yeah,
That's the
and
thing.
this is not a great comp because it hasn't really worked out for them. But if you look back to the summer of 2018, right, and John Tavares and him going to the Leafs,
True.
right, and John Tavares looks at that roster and he sees Mitch Marner 21, Austin Matthews 21, Morgan Riley 24,
Mm,
even guys like us, like kind of side guys like Kasperi Kapanen, who was supposed to be pretty good, 22, and a lot of other guys. William Nylander, 22, and a lot of other guys, 25, 26 range. This is a good situation
yep.
to land in, right? And even though it hasn't obviously worked out with sustained long playoff runs for them, the idea made sense for Toronto at the time. Like, okay, that again, you
Hmm.
crescendo the young talent with a lot of cap space, and if you sign the right guy and your young talent keeps producing, that you might kind of make a symphony. and
Yeah.
so and so that's I so that makes sense to me. And so we'll see in 2 or 3 years if sort of the Sharks have enough guys like that, like the Leafs had in 2019, so, or I'm sorry, 2018, summer 2018. So
Yeah. It's this is the hope podcast. That we're selling hope.
I'm not selling
I
it. I'm just trying to understand,
understand the way.
sort of like, because I'm sure Mike has he's not showing us his sort of his charts and where he has guys projected on the depth chart in a couple of years, and he shouldn't. That's all. It's all his in his mind and whatnot, right? But I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure that he has sort of designed sort of idea of what he's projecting out of these guys, where he sees a William Eklund in 2 years, where he sees a Will Smith in 2 years, where he sees a Mukhamadullin and a Thrun and a Ferraro if they don't trade him, right? And all that, right? And so yeah, so I think that if I whiteboarded all this out, that like it wouldn't be, it might not be that dissimilar to what Greer has in mind for what
Yeah.
has to happen for them to again to kind of be in that at least playoff discussion in 2 to 3 years.
It's and you also just really have to hope that somehow Couture and Hurdle like fight father time,
Oh, sure,
like
sure. That's a
really, really
big
hard.
piece of it for sure.
Because they're
But
$15 million on your sheet
yep,
is Logan and Hurdle, and they really gotta they're getting in their 30s, and they really have to hold on to being, you know, good,
yeah.
good-ish.
So we talked about this all the time, like what you look for Sharks games to keep hope. Obviously, a game like tonight, Eklund and Mukhamadullin, they had good moments, right? But you also want Couture and Hurdle. You need them to keep going, so because they make a lot of
Yeah,
money, and if they drop off like a Vlasic, then you're going to be in trouble. So
yeah, they're in some ways Vlasic's ending so much sooner than they are, that like they're way more concerning. Like if they start to
mm.
do poorly, but neither of them have kind of shown that. They've both looked all
No,
right.
they
I mean,
they they
Couture's
haven't.
back
Yeah.
from injury. He's still getting acclimated, but he's looked okay. And then Hurdle's been fine this whole year. So
Yeah. And we used the LA example a number of times too, that Kopitar and Dowley have managed to stay top flight NHL players for a long time. And so you're
hmm
hoping for something like that they can be useful as your team is ascending the standings again.
yep. Getting moved down the lineup, but still
Right.
making tons of money.
Right. But
Yeah,
still being very valuable players, even down
yeah.
in the lineup. So
Yes, it's interesting times to be a Sharks fan.
yeah.
I'm excited to see, and in this draft, I'm doing more and more watching, and it's just getting me so excited. And Macklin is pretty good. He had he had a good game tonight. It felt like he was
Mhm.
setting up his teammates like every other play, and nobody would put it in for him. They lost again to BC, but I'm excited, and I really do hope the Sharks win the lottery. As doesn't need to be stated, but
Yeah.
it would help. All of this would
Yeah.
help if we had won Bedard or Celebrini. So,
Right, right. Of course, that changes. And Mike did say that
mhm.
you can see in the transcript. He mentioned luck a number of times, and so they'll need some luck too to
Yep.
get to this 2025, 26, 2027, just in that range like that. That we really start to see kind of that light that hey, this team can be the next good team, next playoff team. And you did bring up a great point with the Ottawa Senators, and we'll get to that. I think it's a great discussion point for future podcasts. How the Sharks can avoid some of the pitfalls that the Sabres and the Senators have experienced trying to get out of their
Mhm.
long rebuilds.
Yep. And different podcast for a different day. I think we've talked a lot. Let's get out of
Yep.
here. Anything else to say for this week?
No, I think I am talked out. So yeah.
I feel also pretty talked out. But we will be back next week with coverage of the AHL All Star
Yeah, we're gonna do a deeper dive.
previews.
A lot of
Yeah.
people have asked about it, and so I can say because I've done a lot of the groundwork for it. So a lot of people have asked why are the Barracuda so bad, and what's going on with the
Yep.
Barracuda, and so I've dug pretty deep on that, and I have a guest too, or we have a guest too that will talk about it, and so
hmm
I think next week is going to be interesting if you're curious about why the Barracuda are in last place and should it be a coaching change or whatever because of it and that sort of thing.
Super excited. Gonna be a interesting discussion because it was also asked to Greer as well, which we
Yes,
didn't
it
bring
was.
up. But like how John McCarthy and the Barracuda, is it okay to be disappointed in the Barracuda essentially? And he said, yeah, I mean, we're all a little disappointed in the Barracuda. And then went into like, the good job that the staff has done and all that stuff. But um, I think we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, I think there's one major, I guess a tease one. There's one major gap in a lot of coverage of AHL team,
Mhm.
and that's a gap that I hope to fill by talking to people.
Mhm.
And I guess I'll just leave it at that. That I think that I have a better grasp of sort of how the Barracuda should be doing. I think based on talking to the people that I've talked to, that we've talked to. So
Yep.
yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right. Sounds good. Let's see you all next week. Bye.
See you guys.